Something satisfying is happening this morning at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, and it's not what the White House wanted you to see. If you walked past the executive mansion right now, you wouldn't see the stately symbol of American democracy. You'd see a disaster zone, a massive crater filled with mud where the historic East Wing used to stand, yellow cranes towering over the residence like monuments to ambition gone wrong. And for the first time in 6 months, you'd hear something unexpected: silence. As of 8 a.m. this morning, Monday, January 26, 2026, all construction on President Trump's $400 million Grand Ballroom project has been ordered to stop immediately, indefinitely. A federal judge appointed by Ronald Reagan just issued a 40-page injunction that doesn't merely halt the work. It accuses the administration of willful deception, statutory vandalism, and gross fiscal negligence. The president woke up expecting to see concrete being poured for his monument. Instead, he woke up to a federal marshal taping a cease and desist order to the construction fence. The official reason is devastating in its simplicity. The money is gone. The private donations that were supposed to fund this project have evaporated. And without the cash, the judge ruled that the President of the United States is effectively squatting on public land, destroying national heritage with an unfunded mandate. Stay with me, because what I'm about to show you explains why this stopped construction site is the perfect symbol of a presidency that has run out of road. Let me take you back to where this started, because none of this makes sense without understanding what happened in late 2025. Fresh off his second inauguration, President Trump announced the most ambitious renovation in White House history. He argued that the traditional East Room was inadequate for hosting world leaders. A leaked memo to his chief of staff described the existing facilities in unflattering terms. His solution was the Grand Ballroom, a proposed 90,000 square foot extension designed to rival the palaces of Europe. Gold leaf detailing, 30-foot ceilings, a dedicated balcony facing the Treasury Department. The price tag was $400 million, but he had a plan to sell it to the public. He promised taxpayers wouldn't pay anything. He claimed that wealthy donors, a coalition of billionaire supporters, had already pledged the full amount. He called it a gift to the nation. The cost wasn't just financial, it was historical. To build this structure, the administration argued they needed to demolish the existing East Wing. This meant destroying the family theater, dismantling the First Lady's offices, excavating the historic gardens. Preservation groups responded immediately. The National Trust for Historic Preservation filed suit within days. Their argument was straightforward: you cannot tear down a historic landmark because you want a larger party venue. The White House belongs to the American people, not to whoever temporarily occupies it, but the demolition proceeded anyway. The Department of Justice utilized a legal maneuver. They argued the project qualified as a national security matter. The new structure would include an underground bunker to replace the aging Presidential Emergency Operations Center. The federal judge overseeing the challenge was skeptical, but faced with national security claims, he allowed demolition to proceed under strict conditions. The East Wing could come down, but not a single ounce of concrete could be poured for the new structure until funding was secured and designs were approved by the National Capital Planning Commission. The administration gambled. They tore it down, assuming the money and permits would follow. They assumed wrong. This morning, Judge Richard Leon returned to the bench. According to everyone in the courtroom, he was furious. The court transcript reads less like a legal opinion and more like an indictment. Here's what the ruling revealed. The administration admitted in a sealed filing on Friday night that the private funding for the ballroom is currently missing. The $400 million pledge was based on non-binding commitments from major donors, hedge fund managers, real estate developers, casino executives, the familiar names of the MAGA donor network. But consider what happened this week: financial turmoil in Japan, asset seizures in New York, the Davos walkout. Those donors are currently facing margin calls. Their portfolios are bleeding value. When the Treasury Department contacted them to collect actual cash for the Ballroom Fund on Friday, the donors disappeared. One major donor, reportedly a Las Vegas casino executive who had pledged $50 million, formally withdrew his commitment on Saturday night. He cited market volatility and fiduciary responsibility to shareholders. The judge's ruling was severe. He wrote that the executive branch demolished a historic federal structure based on promised replacement funds that do not exist. He stated the court will not allow the People's House to become an abandoned construction site fueled by phantom capital and broken promises. He ordered an immediate work stoppage. He ordered the General Services Administration to provide a restoration plan, meaning fill in the hole if funding is not secured within 30 days. Think about what that means. The President of the United States might be forced by a federal judge to fill in the hole he dug, leaving the White House smaller and less functional than when he found it. He would become the president who destroyed the East Wing and left a patch of grass in its place. But the ruling gets worse. The national security justification, the shield used to start the demolition, collapsed in spectacular fashion. For months, the White House claimed this ballroom was necessary for continuity of government. They claimed the basement would house an impenetrable new situation room. In today's hearing, the judge unsealed a classified report from the Secret Service that the administration tried to suppress. The Secret Service opposed the project. Their report states that the massive construction zone created a critical security vulnerability on the east side of the complex. The open pit exposes the residents' foundations to drone surveillance, acoustic monitoring, and tunneling risks. The Secret Service explicitly stated that the glass-walled ballroom design would be a nightmare to protect. Internal assessments described it as extremely difficult to secure and highly vulnerable to surveillance. The judge caught the administration in a contradiction. They used national security as a pretext to bypass historic preservation laws. In reality, the project compromised national security. This destroys the legal defense. The ballroom is not a government necessity, it's a personal project. And under the Antiquities Act and the National Historic Preservation Act, you cannot destroy national monuments for personal preferences. Now let me show you why the optics are devastating. President Trump built his image on aesthetics. Gold towers, projections of absolute control and perfection. Instead, he's living in a construction site. The view from the resident's window where he sleeps is a mud pit. Piles of dirt, idle machinery, orange safety fencing. The noise of construction has plagued the West Wing for months. Staffers report that Oval Office meetings were constantly interrupted by equipment sounds. Now, with the work stopped, it becomes a monument to failure. Every time a foreign leader visits, their motorcade passes the crater. When the British Prime Minister arrives next month, they'll drive past a hole in the ground covered in blue tarps. Every news broadcast from the North Lawn has yellow cranes in the background. It's a constant, physical, undeniable reminder that the president started something he couldn't finish. Compare this to the builder persona he campaigned on. The promises of projects completed ahead of schedule and under budget. The pledge to rebuild America. This project is behind schedule, over budget, unfunded, and now illegal. It connects directly to the asset seizure narrative. He can't pay for his building in New York. He can't pay for his ballroom in Washington. The pattern is insolvency. Why did the donors really withdraw? The stock market decline provided the excuse, but the deeper reason was toxic association. After the Davos incident, where the president faced open ridicule from world leaders, attaching your name to a Trump ballroom became a liability. Consider the calculation facing a Fortune 500 CEO or hedge fund manager. Do you want your name engraved on a ballroom being sued by every preservation organization in America? Do you want association with an administration that's seizing property in Greenland while having its own property seized in New York? The prestige of the project transformed into poison. The donors recognized that this ballroom might never be completed, or worse, the next president could demolish it upon taking office. Nobody wants to pay $50 million for a building that gets torn down in 2029. So they used the financial turmoil as cover. They assessed the volatility. They noted the subpoenas. They closed their checkbooks. And the president is left holding the consequences. There's also legal exposure for the donors. The judge indicated that if funds were promised but not delivered and donors signed affidavit claiming the money was secure, they might face fraud investigations. The donor network is lawyering up. They're distancing themselves from the White House at unprecedented speed. The opposition is weaponizing this effectively. House Minority Leader Hockey Jeff released a statement within minutes of the ruling. He described a pattern of destruction. The East Wing, the economy, international alliances, all demolished, now standing in the mud of his own making. The metaphor is powerful and visceral. The East Wing contained history, the legacy of previous first ladies. By destroying it for a ballroom, the president reinforced negative perceptions. By failing to rebuild it, he reinforced others. Focus groups are expressing frustration. They're asking why $400 million is being spent on a ballroom when gas costs $6 per gallon. They're saying he cares more about parties than their grocery bills. The contrast between luxury obsession and economic pain is politically lethal. It reinforces perceptions of disconnection. Republican senators are quietly furious. They have to defend this on television. They have to explain why the White House resembles an excavation site. Senate moderates are quoted saying, "This is what happens when governance operates by impulse rather than law." They warned against touching the East Wing. Now everyone appears complicit. There's discussion of a Senate inquiry. The Committee on Public Works might call the GSA administrator to testify. They want to know who authorized demolition without secured funding. If that hearing happens, it will be a televised disaster. So what happens in the next 30 days? The judge set a clear deadline. Find $400 million in cash or fill in the hole. Can the administration find the money? They could attempt to divert military funds, as was done with border wall construction during the first term, but the judge anticipated that the order specifically prohibits use of appropriated funds without congressional approval. And Congress isn't providing anything. They could seek foreign government funding. Imagine the scandal. A foreign power paying for an addition to the White House. It would trigger immediate constitutional crisis, emoluments violations of the most direct kind. The most likely scenario is the most humiliating one. The GSA hires a contractor to pour dirt back into the hole. They plant grass, they restore the exterior wall, and the Trump ballroom becomes a phantom in the historical record. This is the nightmare scenario for someone who wanted to leave a physical legacy. He wanted to leave a palace. He's leaving a patch of fresh sod where a historic building used to stand. Let me show you what was actually lost. The East Wing wasn't just offices. It was built during World War II under FDR to conceal construction of the underground bunker. It stood for over 80 years. It housed the First Lady's staff, the engine of soft power diplomacy. It was the entrance for visitors where the tours began. By demolishing it without a plan, the administration severed the social function of the White House. The First Lady's staff is reportedly working out of the Eisenhower Executive Office building across the street, separated from the residence. Reports suggest significant internal tension about the situation. The National Trust for Historic Preservation is typically a quiet organization. They hold galas. They preserve old buildings. For them to sue a sitting president represents an extraordinary escalation. They viewed this as an existential threat to national heritage. Their argument was fundamental. The White House is not the president's property. It belongs to the people. It's held in trust. The judge's ruling establishes a critical legal principle: stewardship, not ownership. This precedent will constrain the administration for the remainder of the term. Every renovation request will face microscopic scrutiny. Here's a detail the coverage missed. The construction crews on site belong to unions, laborers, crane operators, concrete workers. When the financial shock hit on Friday, the unions demanded payment assurance. They know the history of contractors going unpaid on Trump projects in New York and Atlantic City. The contractor couldn't provide that assurance because the donor money froze. The unions walked off the job before the judge's order arrived. The judge simply ratified what the labor market had already decided. No payment, no work. The self-proclaimed builder lost the support of the builders. Union workers walking off a Trump job site sends a powerful signal to working-class voters. The claim that the ballroom was necessary for a new Situation Room was the most problematic element of all. The current Situation Room in the West Wing basement was fully renovated in 2024. It's state-of-the-art. It cost $50 million. Intelligence officials testified in closed session that relocating the Situation Room to a glass-walled ballroom basement was operationally indefensible. You don't put the most secure room in the world under a dance floor. You don't position it next to a catering kitchen. The judge reviewed this testimony. It was the evidence that proved the national security claim was pretextual. Yeah, this reads like a closing monologue, but it's a little overloaded and could hit much harder with structure and tightening. Here's a sharpened version that keeps your argument intact, raises the stakes cleanly, and lands the metaphor without over-explaining it. It proved the administration was willing to compromise real security for a party venue, and now there's potential criminal exposure. If the administration submitted affidavits to the court claiming funding was secured when it was only promised, that's not spin, that's perjury. The judge saw the risk immediately. He ordered the White House to produce donor commitments by Wednesday: names, signatures, actual documents. If those filings show the money was never secured, if this was all projection, someone faces legal consequences, not necessarily the president himself, but the GSA administrator, the campaign finance chair. Someone put their name on paper. That's the shift. What began as a construction dispute is now a potential fraud investigation. Another front opens in an already crowded legal war. And look at the timing. This week started with chaos in Davos over Greenland. Then financial instability rippled out of Tokyo. Then asset seizures hit New York. And now it ends with a literal hole in the ground in Washington. The pattern isn't coincidence. It's collapse. Like the East Wing itself, the foundations are eroding at the same time. Money, loyalty, image, competence. All of it simultaneously. We're watching a president under siege inside his own residence, unable to build, unable to borrow, unable to project the success he promised. All that's left is the view from the window: mud, rebar, and court filings. If the GSA issues a remediation contract, if the order comes to fill the hole back in, that will be the moment this presidency officially runs out of concrete. The builder president becomes the demolition president. Some things can't be spun, some failures can't be blamed on others, some holes can't be explained away. This is one of them. Trump blindsided by federal judge. A ballroom from hell. Construction stopped. No way out.